Good evening, viewers, and welcome. This is Super Primetime Max on the debate with Arnab. Today, this afternoon, a not-so-noticed press conference was organized by a group called Save Culture, Save Bharat Foundation. This is flagging the pornographic nature of everyday content that is being made available on OTT platforms to hundreds of millions of Indians. The foundation today presented evidence, hard evidence, that X, formerly Twitter, and Netflix have become platforms which allow the broadcasting of pornographic, sexually explicit and obscene content across India in violation of laws like the POCSO Act, the Indian Penal Code, the IT Act, and the Indecent Representation of Women Act. This is not just restricted to Netflix. There are many, many other OTT platforms, almost all of the major ones, against whom this group is acting. I will not hesitate, ladies and gentlemen, though I'm not passing judgment now, but I will not hesitate to say that this is true because on the one hand, you have obscene content. On the other hand, you have semi-pornographic content, including elaborate enactments of rape, which have become the new normal in these web series, many of these OTT platforms. OTT platforms want to amass the viewers and they will go to any extent for it. And the fact that we have access to these content on our fingertips should worry us. Now, there are some people who say, let's be liberal about it. To them, I would say, pornography is not liberal. Pornography or semi-pornography is not progressive. On debate number 4 tonight at 9:20, a debate I'm sure you will want to engage in, the Save Culture, Save Bharat founder, Uday Mahurkar, is calling this the cultural genocide, which is being done by putting out so much adult pornographic content. And I'm saying pornography is not progressive. Before that, tonight, I have a number of debates this evening for you viewers. Let's quickly tell you at 8 o'clock tonight, there's a huge controversy around the presence of a US bipartisan delegations meeting with the Dalai Lama scheduled for tomorrow. Beijing is warning the US administration, and the latest US-China fight is centered around Dharamshala in Himachal Pradesh. Dharamshala is the latest flashpoint because that meeting is happening tomorrow. So Global Eyes will be on that meeting at 8:30 p.m. tonight. There are pictures that have emerged of a palace that was apparently made by Jagan for his private use. Jagan's party denies it, but this is a 500 to 600 crore home that had been made using taxpayer money. And on the debate tonight, I'm asking whether homes like these, which are made using taxpayer money, should be paid for by the politicians themselves. Why should your and my taxpayer money go for that? Also tonight, ladies and gentlemen, at 9 o'clock this evening in Varanasi, there is a massive Modi Yogi show of strength. The BJP is going all out to win Uttar Pradesh. But the question is, can they? What kind of realignment do they need to do? And how quickly do they need to do it? That is at 9 p.m. tonight. And let me quickly take you through the main headlines this Tuesday evening on the debate tonight. Controversy over US delegation, including former Speaker Nancy Pelosi's meeting in Dharamshala, where she is scheduled to meet the Dalai Lama tomorrow. But this meeting has got China very rattled as they urge US President Joe Biden not to sign the Tibet policy bill, warning of resolute measures. So the next center of US-China tension is in Himachal Pradesh from Dharamshala. We are tracking that tomorrow. Doors of the resorts developed atop Rushikonda Hill opens for public view, but it raises severe eyebrows over the amount of money spent over it. This apparently is called Jagan's Palace. The palace that you see on your screens costs almost 500 crores. The bathtub costs some 26 lakhs. And the Telugu Desam party says that Jagan Reddy's luxurious palace was paid for by taxpayer money. After the Prime Minister's historic third term, he is in his home turf today in Varanasi, flanked by Yogi Adityanath. He released the 17th installment of the PM Kisan fund amounting to more than 20,000 crores. Visited the Dashashwamedh Ghat and offered prayers. The BJP is going all out to win back Uttar Pradesh in 2027. The Prime Minister seen in a contemplative mood on this Varanasi visit. And there are serious concerns being raised and flagged regarding pornographic content on OTT platforms. The Save Culture, Save Bharat Foundation has urged the Government of India to ban X and Netflix for violations of the POCSO Act for sexually explicit content and for waging a war against India's culture and character. Ladies and gentlemen, China is irked, they are scared and they are rattled. All of this as the US delegation is in India, is in Himachal's Dharamshala to meet the Dalai Lama. China has urged US President Joe Biden to not sign the Tibet policy bill, expressing strong concern over a high-level US Congress's delegation to Dharamshala tomorrow to meet the Dalai Lama. The meeting with the Dalai Lama, ladies and gentlemen, the 88-year-old Dalai Lama happens just on the eve of the Dalai Lama's visit for medical treatment to the United States. China has already put out a statement. Trust me, when this meeting happens tomorrow, as the Nancy Pelosi meets the Dalai Lama along with the bipartisan US delegation, there's going to be global fireworks. So the big story tomorrow is going to be out of Dharamshala, and we are going to be tracking that meeting very closely. Here's a quick report and then we debate.
On the back of US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan's visit to India, a bipartisan delegation led by former US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Michael McCaulis landed at the Kangra airport earlier today.
We are very excited to see His Holiness tomorrow to talk about many things, including the bill we just passed out of Congress that basically says that the United States of America stands with the people of Tibet.
On the agenda, a meeting with the Dalai Lama in Dharamshala. The high-level delegation visits India amidst an impending trade war between two nations, which started last month with the US tariff hikes on Chinese EVs and other critical exports. While the State Department has learned its lessons of not interfering in Indian democracy based on Pakistani prompts, the visit of the US delegation to meet the Dalai Lama is seen as one that is aimed to instigate a Chinese response. As Prime Minister Modi enters his third term, US activity around India has picked up pace. First, the high-level meeting of the NSA with top Indian officials and the Prime Minister, then the US delegation in Dharamshala. All this while US continued to parade Nikhil Gupta in an alleged plot to murder Khalistani terrorist Gurpatwant Singh Pannu. The question remains, is the United States attempting to shoot from the shoulders of India in its proxy war with China? And is US sympathy for Khalistani terrorists like Pannu and Nikhil Gupta's extradition in the alleged Pannu plot an attempt to pull India's levers?
Michael Kugelman, author and Deputy Director of the Asia Program, is joining us from Washington. Sushant Sareen, Senior Fellow at the ORF. Andrew K.P. Leung, Independent China Strategist. And my first question is to Tenzin Lekshe, spokesperson for the Central Tibetan Administration. Mr. Lekshe, this meeting that the Dalai Lama is having with the bipartisan American delegation, including former US House Speaker and Nancy Pelosi, couldn't it have happened on American soil? Because the Dalai Lama is anyway scheduled to travel to the United States in a couple of days, I think tomorrow, immediately after this meeting. Why have this meeting in Dharamshala and drag India into it?
Arnab, this is not to drag India into it. The Tibet issue, as you know, has been a long-standing conflict between China and Tibet. And this visit has been prepared quite a long time back. And His Holiness' visit has scheduled quite recently. So therefore, this is not something which you have spoke about. And China has also been spoke about. This is nothing about controversial. This is plainly the United States' support for the people of Tibet, right? So now the question lies with China. Do Chinese government, right, goes and stands with the people of Tibet? That's a question. Otherwise, how the Tibetan conflict, Sino-Tibetan conflict, has to go on for the last 60, 70 years, right? So the question is for the Chinese leaders, do they really stand for the people of Tibet, right? So for this, I think we have the high-level congressional delegation, right, in Dharamshala. So they will meet His Holiness tomorrow, and we'll have a public felicitation also in honor of all the congressional delegations, right? This is not just the congressional delegations. They are the American people's support for Tibet, right? So it has been a long time. So why? The question is why? Because we have the truth on us, right? And truth has to prevail no matter what. So this is not the one thing. So in the future also, there will be more. There will be more visits.
There'll be more visits.
Yes.
And the visits will be to Dharamshala.
Yes, certainly. The
McCaulis to be exact.
Can be somewhere else.
Yes. So, okay. So how does, why, Andrew, just going to Andrew in Hong Kong. Andrew, now, this is too many decades have passed. China should stop being very, do any muscle flexing over it. Because after all, China was very angry when Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan. And that was intended to give a signal to China about America's position on the Taiwan issue. China launched war games, but did nothing more. In this case, what can China really do apart from issue statements from their foreign office?
Well, China's position on Tibet has been very consistent over the decades. Tibet is firmly part of China. And then the question of the Dalai Lama's succession is coming up because the Dalai Lama is something like 88 years old, and his health is not in the best of conditions. So I think that they both, China and the United States, alive to these kind of situations.
But Andrew,
and of course, Nancy Pelosi has a history of provoking China.
But Andrew, you can't have a global meltdown over this. I mean, policies are not going to change. I don't know. Let me go to for a view from America, from Michael. Michael, how significant is this visit? And how significantly would America see the kind of aggressive noises that have already started regarding tomorrow's visit from Beijing?
Right. So, I mean, important to provide the broader context here that this meeting with the Dalai Lama that these congressional leaders had was one of a number of stops that this congressional delegation will be meeting in India. They'll be meeting with Indian business leaders. They'll be meeting with others. So, this was not a case of these congressional leaders traveling to India just to meet with the Dalai Lama. It was part of the trip. It is significant that they decided to meet with him as part of the trip. Absolutely. I think not just symbolically, but substantively. I think that's very notable. But keeping in mind as well that these are members of Congress. They're not members of the administration. They don't come from executive branch agencies, which means that what they're doing does not reflect U.S. policy. It is not meant to reflect any type of U.S. position. But in this broader context of talk about President Biden being asked to sign a bill that would go quite far in extending U.S. support for for Tibet, I think that then highlights the importance of this meeting that congressional leaders, bipartisan congressional leaders, are having with the Dalai Lama. But I think that for me, what really stands out is about just how intense and deep U.S.-China competition has become. The fact that you're having meetings like this, and as was noted before, the fact that we're starting to see some very sharp views being voiced by members of Congress on the issue of Taiwan. This is very significant. The U.S. is going further than it really has in quite some time. And this might pose a challenge, quite frankly, for U.S. policy, because even though this U.S.-China competition is really becoming quite intense and bitter, the administration has indicated its desire to try to find areas of cooperation where it can with Beijing, and areas from public health to climate change to even non-proliferation. And I wonder, given how Beijing will likely respond or has responded to this meeting that these congressional leaders have had with the Dalai Lama, if those goals of the administration could be impacted deleteriously, if it might be more difficult in the coming days and weeks to try to carve out some areas of collaboration
but
between
Michael,
the U.S. and China,
yeah,
even against
it's
the
a US-China issue. My concern from an Indian perspective is, Sushant, that we have had the freedom to decide the nature of our policy with China. We have had clashes with them in the Northeast, in Ladakh, and we have managed this relationship, including the power equation in South Asia and Southeast Asia, between both of us. As China moves towards South Asia, we move towards Southeast Asia, and therefore we sort of balance out each other. My concern at the pro-American group in India will be, and I want your take on that, a lot of people are very excited about joining hands with America to take on China, is that America has its own economic battle with China which is going on. And if we are not careful, if the Modi government is not careful, then the United States will start determining the pace and exact nature of our relationship. And India will be used by the Americans as a spearhead in their battle with China. Our battle with China, our long-standing dispute with China is very different and very contextual. Should we become a spearhead of the Americans? Which is why I began by asking, and I do think Nancy Pelosi and this bipartisan team could have well met the Dalai Lama wherever he is going for treatment. He's going to the treatment day after, and you're coming all the way to Dharamshala to meet him today. It's signaling both to India and to China and drawing us into something that we may have kept dormant for a longer period of time in our own interests.
So, Arnab, let's get a couple of things straight. Number one, this is not the first time that senior US congressmen or congress people or senior officials have traveled to Dharamshala to meet His Holiness the Dalai Lama. This is not the first time. It's happened plenty of times in the past. If the Chinese have a meltdown every time somebody talks to His Holiness, then that's their problem. That's not anybody else's problem. They need to show a certain degree of maturity about these things. Number one. Number two, I think the assumption that India has no agency in deciding whether a delegation from the United States should go to the Dharamsala or not, and it's the Americans who are talking down to us and instructing us that such and such person will be wanting to go out there. I don't think that's the case. If we have allowed them to go, then there has to be some reason, there has to be some thought which would have been given by people, and I'm not privy to what their calculations are, but I'm very confident that this would not have happened.
Sushant, small intervention. When Nancy Pelosi in December 22 went to Taiwan, she was the speaker. She met the Taiwanese president. It was an official visit, and it was a red line for Beijing. This time, this is almost happening stealthily. While Jake Sullivan is shaking hands with the Prime Minister from the back door, Nancy Pelosi leads a visit which has equal level of significance. It may not be official. She may be ex-speaker now. Equally significant. It's almost as if the Americans are free to do their domestic politics in India.
Arnab, it's not the Americans are free to do their domestic politics in India. It's that Indians have allowed that to happen. Otherwise,
Why?
this could.
Why? On the same day, ironically, I know these things are not timed, on the same day, while America makes an exhibition of carrying Nikhil Gupta on a chartered plane to the US, releases a 4-page statement about how the government of India tried to kill a Khalistani terrorist. So I'm a little concerned about being too much in the American corner now.
So would I be very much concerned about being in the American corner. I don't want to be, become another Pakistan for America to get bleeded and then left alone. I certainly don't want that. But I think to imagine that the government of India would be doing it because of some character who has been caught and been extradited to the US, those are two completely different cases. And I don't think we should conflate the two. We can discuss that particular case separately. But on this particular issue, I think it is important to understand, look, it's not as though the Chinese have been extremely friendly towards us. It's not as though that they have taken care of our sensitivities and our interests. Number one. Number two, I don't think the government of India's position has changed. The government of India's position has been that the Dalai Lama is an honored guest. Yes, if people go to meet him, we are going to let him meet. But he can't do politics in India and he can't use Indian soil for whatever else he wants to do to create trouble in China. So we have maintained that very fine line, and I don't think that fine line is changing. Now, if the Americans are wanting to meet him, and again, I think you're confusing or you're conflating rather the fact that this congressional visit has come. Now, this would not have been decided overnight. The visits of this nature take some time in planning, especially if it's not on a single issue. That these are people who are going to come and meet a whole lot of other people in India. So it's not just that they're coming to go to Dharamshala and that's about it. It's a much more broader visit. So I think we should not look at it purely.
So what are we, facilitators for the Americans?
We are not facilitators for anybody. If the Americans want to go and we don't have any objection to it, why should we unnecessarily?
But Dalai Lama is under our protection on our soil.
Yeah, so have we not done it in the past? We've done it at least a dozen times in the past. That time, no, hell didn't freeze over because we were.
But the global situation right now, the global situation has to be looked at.
Yeah. So we look at. So listen.
I'm saying, what about our interest? I'm saying, what about our? Okay, Tenzin. I'm saying, what about our interest? We need a 5 to 10 year period to militarily, as you know, build be on an equal footing with the Chinese.
Arnab, please tell me, what have the Chinese done which makes them such a favorable partner for us?
No, they're not. Of course not. I'm no China fan at all.
Have they not been fingering us on the Khalistan issue?
No, sure.
Have they been fighting with Pakistan and trying to catch us in?
I'm only concerned about our pace, Sushant. Okay, Tenzin wants to come in. Tenzin, yeah, you're saying something, Tenzin.
See, Arnab, it is not just to look into the lens of this rivalry and conflict and all these things, right? It is about the truth. It is about the way the Tibetan aspirations are since the Chinese occupation. As Andrew has rightly pointed out, China has a consistent policy on Tibet, yes, but the consistent policy on Tibet was not on favor of Tibetan people, but rather they are serving themselves for their own security because they are insecure. So over the last 6 decades, China has been impressing all these policies just for themselves, not into fulfilling the aspirations of Tibetan people. So therefore, this high-level delegation is symbolic, not just symbolic. It's important to tell China.
Tenzin, are you saying that these are all fake threats by the Chinese when they say, we will take up resolute measures if Biden signs the Tibet bill? Are you saying there's all smoke? There's no fire that will come out of it?
No, one thing they need to do is, yes, all through the time, they remain critical of whatever we do. Whatever the Tibetans do, they remain critical all through the time, right? So this time, they had also released the press statement, right, today. The Foreign Ministry regular press statement also had this kind of, they will do the resolute, some kind of actions. Now the one thing they need to do is, the resolute action, what they have to do is, they need to look within themselves retrospect, right, in retrospections, to see what they have done for the Tibetan people, right? If they got the answer, what they have done for the Tibetan people, then that's it. So for the last so many decades, we are here, voice of those voiceless Tibetan, asking for the freedom.
But my point is, can the Chinese escalate at all? I'm not saying vis-a-vis India. Can the Chinese escalate vis-a-vis America, Andrew?
They escalate even
Can they escalate vis-a-vis America? Can they really escalate? Do they want to?
Well, Tibet is a very, very sensitive issue for China for a long, long time. And of course, China has been extremely consistent in opposing any kind of formal recognition of the Dalai Lama as the leader of Tibet. And so that's why the Beijing has made very strong concerns about these maneuvers. And of course, if the United States passes the bill, I can bet that Beijing is going to adopt some sort of measures to really scale down the kind of contact with the United States on other fronts, because China cannot just be seen to be sitting still to allow this.
But you sat still after Taiwan.
Measures against
you sat still
Tibet,
in 22.
To happen.
You sat still in 22.
Well, I mean, that's the reality of international politics. I think we've got to take this in their stride.
Michael, what do you think?
Look, it's hard to say. This is a very fraught relationship right now between the U.S. and China. And as was noted before, what we've seen play out in the last few days is not unprecedented. You have had American political leaders meet with the Dalai Lama, and it'll probably happen again. And this is part of the challenge for diplomats in Washington and Beijing, and New Delhi for that matter, is how to manage all this. I can't speak for Beijing's position, but Washington's position is, I think, not to let this rivalry or this competition spiral out of control that much. But then again, there's very important positions and clear signals that U.S. leaders want to send to China.
Yeah,
particularly on this issue.
I am as of now, Michael, I'm only focused on the fact that I feel that if we are being friendly with America, the least America does is stop being unfriendly with us, Sushant. I mean, I think their attempt at trying to use Nikhil Gupta to defend a terrorist is in very poor taste. I mean, to use all your government machinery to defend a terrorist and go public with it, to antagonize a country you call a strategic partner is in very poor taste. Sushant, you wanted to add something else.
Arnab, I'll just say three things very quickly. One, on this whole Pannu issue and this whole Gupta issue, I think you need to have a separate debate because we need to discuss it far more in greater detail about what I would call the perfidy of the Americans on this particular issue, that they allow a terrorist to run openly, freely, threaten the Indian Prime Minister, threaten to bomb airlines, and no action is taken against him. So clearly there's something wrong, and clearly there should be a pushback from India, and a major one. But on the China question, Arnab, very quickly, you talk about, isn't it provocative for the Chinese? Look, the Chinese track record has been that old parable of, that wolf and that little lamb, that the wolf says that, look, even if the water is coming from above, you must have drunk the water even though you're downstream, and so I'm going to kill you. That is the Chinese position. Everything in the world is theirs. Every country is theirs. They are all over the world. Mars is theirs. Jupiter is theirs. The moon is theirs. The sun is theirs. And everybody else lives on their sufferance. I'm sorry, unacceptable. And second,
I actually agree with you. I agree with your assessment of the Chinese there. I completely agree with your assessment. And Maldives is also theirs. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll take a quick 30-second Securite commercial break. And I want to tell you, viewers, that we have our reporters on the ground in Dharamshala. It's a very high-profile visit. It's a globally significant visit, and it could lead to a tremor in global relations between China and the US. I expect the usual Chinese overreaction to it. And when I come back on the other side, I'll show you pictures of a 500 crore house, or should I call palace, that allegedly Jagan was building for himself on taxpayer money.